So, today we're going to talk about setting yourself free. Although, truthfully, you don't need to set yourself free, you're already free. But if you were already willing to believe that to be true, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. So, even though you are free, it appears that you're not, and there are all these thoughts telling you you're not, and there are all these things that you create that tell you that you're not as free as you would like to be. You are already totally free. But we don't perceive it that way always. So, I'm going to give you guys a process to get to the place where you can actually admit that you are free and you can actually feel that. And it doesn't feel so much like everything's all twisted up or however it feels to you. So, I'm going to talk about this in 4 different parts. And if you would say these 4 things to yourself, it will resolve anything that you think is an issue in your life. Of course, you don't have any issues or any problems in your life at all. You just have all of these creations that you misperceive as problems or difficulties, or whatever you want to call it. Truly, there's nothing wrong with you. Truly, there's nothing wrong with anything. Everything is your creation that you are giving yourself the gift of experiencing. But we don't always perceive it to be that way. Quite often, we are misperceiving what is going on over and over and over again. And we're choosing to buy into that misperception that we're having, that misperception that we're actually creating, rather than to admit what's true. So, these 4 phrases: I love myself, which if that feels a little bit cheesy to you, that's an indicator that you really might want to use that one. I forgive myself. And as we spoke about yesterday, this is not forgiveness like I did something wrong and I need to be punished, please forgive me. That's not the kind of forgiveness we're talking about. This forgiveness is more like, okay, I'm aware that I've created a misperception here, and I am giving myself the space to admit that that's a misperception. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about forgiveness. I appreciate myself. You appreciate that you are the source of everything, that everything is created by you. You appreciate that you are able to create misperceptions around that. You appreciate that you're able to trick yourself into feeling like anyone or anything else creates what you're experiencing. You appreciate that you can create an illusion of separation where there is none. And you appreciate the essence of what you actually are. And the last one is, I release myself. You set yourself free of this thing that you're pretending is so real that you've created, that you know isn't real, but that you've been really, really choosing to keep creating as real, and really, really choosing to keep freaking out about, and really, really choosing to keep suffering under the delusion of. You release yourself from all of that. And you can do this with anything. It's very simple. So if you will allow yourself to fully love yourself beyond judgment as the creator and the experiencer of everything at once, those two things are not separate. The creation and the experience is not separate. It's not step one and step two. That's all happening simultaneously. And if you will really love and appreciate yourself on both sides of that, the creation and the appreciation, some people call this receiving. You can call it whatever you want. But at the end of the day, the whole thing in your life that feels troublesome or traumatic or painful, the whole essence of suffering is when you deny that you are creating it and you deny the experience. If you didn't deny that you create everything, and you didn't deny experiencing everything that you're going to create, if you weren't trying to resist what you're creating, would there be any suffering? Even suffering is a creation. When you resist suffering, you appear to suffer more. If you will really appreciate that you are creating all of that, you are the source of all of that, you are the flow of all of that. Some people say you're in the flow. You're not in the flow, you are the flow of all of that. And it feels twisted up when you try to deny that you are the flow of all of that, that you are the source of all of that, that you are creating all of that. It's twisted up by the resistance to admitting that and the resistance to experiencing that. And we could look at this in any area of your life where you feel a sense of difficulty. People have been writing to me a lot about money lately. And they'll tell me whatever their money situation is. And no matter what the story is, the underlying message that they're delivering is, I'm choosing to feel miserable about money. They say money is making them miserable. But really what's actually happening is that they're choosing to be miserable, and they're inventing that that misery is about money. Money does not have the power to make you happy. Money does not have the power to make you sad. You choose to be happy when you appear to get more money, and you choose to be sad when you appear to lose money. But you are the source of everything that you experience, so how do you really lose anything? How is anything ever destroyed? Things just change form. You are the source of everything. Everything is your energy made up into form and substance. How does anything ever get destroyed? How is anything ever lost? How is anything ever dead? It just changes form. The energy beneath it is still the same. The energy beneath it is still you. Everything is an expression of you. So it actually makes absolutely no sense to be miserable on behalf of money or anything else, but it is something we choose as a creative expression. You have to love that you are choosing it as a creative expression. You have to forgive that you are choosing it as a creative expression. You have to appreciate that you are choosing it as a creative expression, and you have to release yourself from choosing it as a creative expression. But a lot of people try to do these different modalities and tools and techniques as like a trick or a cheat to sneak around doing all that. They go, yes, of course, I release myself from this money issue. And then they go right back to looking at money the same way they were looking at it before they released themselves from the money issue. So you didn't really release yourself from the money issue. You didn't really love yourself for creating this appearance of a money issue. You didn't really forgive yourself for creating this appearance of a money issue. You didn't really appreciate yourself for creating this appearance of a money issue. And you didn't really release yourself from creating this appearance of a money issue. And this is true of anything in your life that feels like a difficulty. Right now, all around you, all inside of you, everywhere, is the freedom and the joy and the fulfillment and the desire that you think you've been pursuing. But in order to pursue it, you have to ignore that it is everywhere in everything, and that everywhere and everything is inside of you. In order to have anything to pursue, you cannot admit that the thing you're pursuing already exists within you. In order to pursue anything, you have to pretend that you don't already have it. You already have everything. You already are everything. Everything already exists for you. Will you love yourself enough to know that? Will you forgive yourself enough to know that? Will you appreciate yourself enough to know that? And will you release yourself from everything you have created so that you can pretend you don't know that? You already know that. Right now, you can be as joyful as you have ever been for as long as you have existed about nothing at all. Right now, a much, much, much larger part of you is already more joyful than you've ever allowed yourself to be, and it is joyful about nothing at all. It is joyful simply in the act of creation. But we invest a lot of energy in ignoring that and pretending that's not the case, and making this very small and very finite illusion that we've created as our life seem so much more pressing and so much more immediate and so much more necessary than the awareness that you are already infinitely more joyful than you have ever allowed yourself to admit. And it is not based on money. It is not based on your status in the world. It is not based on who likes you or doesn't like you. It's not based on who you get to be in a relationship with. It's not based on your accomplishments. It's not based on your bank account. It's not based on your house. It's not based on your car. It is not based on anything. But really look at your life and see if you haven't denied that at every opportunity with the idea that you need the perfect body, the perfect job, the perfect income, the perfect house, the perfect car. And you could already have all of those things. You could already have all of those things. And in fact, if you really look again at all of those things without the judgment that is so habitual for you, you'll realize I do already have the perfect body. I do already have the perfect house. I do already have the perfect relationships. I do already have. Everything in my life is already perfect. But I've been utterly refusing to ever see it that way. I'm already perfect, but I've been utterly refusing to ever see myself that way. Does unconditionally appreciating yourself as needing nothing, as not needing to improve, as not needing more money, as not needing anyone to like you, does unconditionally appreciating yourself mean that your life will not continue, that you will not expand, that you will not get new experiences and different experiences? Would unconditionally appreciating yourself mean you are done? No. Is it possible that you actually already appreciate yourself far more than you would ever admit? I got a notification that a new book come out that I might be interested in called Learning to Love Yourself by Gay Hendricks. I don't know anything about Gay Hendricks. I don't know anything about the book. But I thought the title was interesting because for a second it made me go, yeah, I should learn how to love myself. And then I stopped and I went, hold on a second. Why do I think that I don't know how to love myself? Why do I think that's a skill that I need to learn? And why do I think that there's any how to that at all? What if it was actually what I am? Was a love and appreciation for myself that isn't based on anything, that I don't need to go and learn to do. It's not to say there's no value in reading that book. It's probably great. I don't know anything about it. And I'm sure the title appeals to a lot of people. But is that something you actually need to learn? Or is that something you already know? Is that something you're already experiencing that you don't allow yourself to be aware that you're experiencing? Would you look at everything you experience that feels bad to you? Would you look at that and ask, is this a delusion? Is this an illusion? Is this what's really going on? Is this stuff rolling around in my head telling me that my situation is negative? Telling me that I should feel bad? Is this real? Or is this a misperception of what I'm creating and what I'm experiencing? In order to even feel that you need anything, you're having a misperception. In order to feel that there is anything you can get from anyone that is in any way going to make you better, you're having a misperception. If you feel that you need to be improved at all, you are having a misperception. And if you would admit that and forgive that and appreciate that and release that, None of this stuff you think you need to do is remotely required. You didn't even need to have this session, but this session could be the only thing you ever need to get clear about this. If you'd really look at anything you're choosing to believe, at anything you're choosing to think, at anything you're choosing to feel, and say, am I having a misperception right now? And actually entertain the idea that it might in fact be a misperception, that you might have in fact created the possibility of misperception so that you can have a variety of experiences that are not just infinitely and eternally loving and kind and graceful to you, and that there's nothing wrong with that, but that it is your choice to love that, forgive that, appreciate that, and release that. And that you don't actually need to take a shortcut. You don't actually need to get around it. You don't actually need to avoid it. So much of the work that I personally have done and have studied, if I'm willing to be honest, was me looking for some kind of shortcut, or particularly spiritual people love to call it spiritual bypassing. None of that is real. But how much time have you actually spent looking for the shortcut, looking for the quick way, looking for the easy way, when the simplest, easiest, quickest way to get through it, as if you even need to get through it, would be to go straight through it and ask, is this even real? How much of this is a total misperception? And you might be shocked to find out pretty much all of it is. In the area of money, how much of what you think and feel and believe and live with regards to money is a total illusion, a total delusion, and a total misperception? All of it. And until you admit that, until you really know that, and until you release yourself from all of that, nothing you do with money is going to make any difference. If you have created an expert maze for yourself that you can never get out of, $100,000 more per year is not going to get you out of that maze, because you've designed it so you never get out. And so as long as you pretend that that maze is real, you ain't ever getting out. You can add $100,000, you can add $1 million, you can add $100 million, you can add $100 billion, you can add as much money as you want to that maze. You're still in the maze, pretending that the maze exists in the first place, when you could really look and admit, I love myself for creating this. I forgive myself for creating this. I appreciate that I created this. And I release myself from creating this. You don't need to wave your hands or do a magic trick or say a mantra or an affirmation. You don't need to listen to anything on a loop for 100 million years to get over. You don't need to do any of that. I'm actually willing to admit that I love myself for creating this. I'm actually willing to forgive myself for creating this. In order to forgive yourself for creating it, you're going to have to give up all judgment of creating it. And making the choice to forgive yourself is about giving up all judgment of having created it. Taking ownership, yes, I created it. And there's nothing wrong with creating it. But see, most of us don't do that. We go, okay, I forgive myself. I'll say whatever you tell me I need to say so I can get to the good part. But you still think there's something wrong with what you've created money to be in your world. And you're going, sure, I forgive myself. If that's what I've got to say, I'll say that. I'll say whatever you tell me to say as long as the bad money thing will change. That's not really making the choice to give up all judgment of it. That's not really making the choice to see yourself as eternally beyond judgment. You exist far greater than anything going on inside of you, and you exist beyond judgment. And you know that about yourself. But how often do you let yourself know that about yourself? About once every 10 years, I let myself be beyond judgment. But most of the time, I'm just thinking how everybody's going to hate me if I ever do any of the stuff I really want to do. But then I'm always wondering why none of the stuff I really want to do ever happens, even though I think everybody would hate me if I ever got there. I forgive myself for creating all of that. I release all judgment of creating all of that. I appreciate that I've managed to create everything that I've managed to create. I appreciate that the creation of most of this stuff for me was so effortless. It was easy to believe I didn't even create it. You don't think about putting effort into making sure the sun comes up when you wake up in the morning. You don't put effort into making sure that the stars come out at night. You don't put effort into making sure there's enough oxygen for you to breathe. It just happens effortlessly. But you really got to figure out how you're going to make some more money. Because if you don't make some more money, you're going to be so awful. But if you make too much money, you're going to be so awful. So I should make just, enough money that I can constantly think about how much better my life would be if only I could have more money, but not too much more. But anything I could do to make more money would be a risk to me somehow, so I'm not going to actually do it. I'm just going to think about how much better my life would be if I had more money. Your life's not going to be any better with more money. Your life's not going to be any worse with less money. That's a total misperception. Can you really admit that your life is not going to be any better with more money? Can you really admit that your life's not going to be any worse with less money? Because money doesn't get to decide how good your life is. Money does not get to decide how much you enjoy your life. Neither does anybody else. When I was a kid, my parents loved to go on vacation because vacation is the source of happiness. And I was a depressed teenager, so we would go on vacation, and the whole time I would be off in a corner somewhere going, when's this going to be over? Can this please be over? I hate this. Why are we in Hawaii? Why are we in Arizona? Why are we anywhere other than at home playing video games? Can I please be excused so I can go play video games? I hate this. Vacation's not the source of happiness. Nothing's the source of happiness. You are already happy. Why do you need a source of happiness? But do you see how unhappy you become when you pretend that you're not already happy and that you have a source of happiness that you don't have enough access to? You're already infinitely joyful, but do you see how unhappy you become when you pretend that anything else is responsible for whether you get to be happy or not? I love that I've been pretending that anyone or anything can make me any happier than I already am, or any less happy than I already am. I forgive myself for believing that anything can make me any more or less happy than I'm currently choosing to be. I appreciate that I've been able to make myself believe that anyone or anything could make me any more or less happy than I'm currently choosing to be. I release myself from believing that anyone or anything can make me any more or less happy than I'm currently choosing to be. Which brings up a really important question. How happy are you currently choosing to be? And if it's not as happy as you'd like to be, release yourself from the trap of believing that the solution to that choice is for you to go and get more money. The solution to that choice is for you to go find a better person to be in a relationship with. The solution to that choice is more friends. The solution to that choice is a designer handbag. You can have all that stuff. All that stuff is so easy to have. When you're willing to admit that none of it will make you happy. Do you see what you're doing to yourself when you choose to believe that another person is going to make you happy? You're ensuring that you can never have that person. Because you're choosing to be unhappy so you can chase something that's going to make you happy. You're already happy. You are pretending that you lack something so you can pretend to be unhappy. You're never going to get the things that you desire by going down that road. Because in order to pretend to be unhappy based on lacking something, you got to pretend you lack it. If you would admit you are really happy based on nothing at all, how much more could you have right now? Is there anything on your big list of things that would supposedly make you happy that you couldn't have if you would admit that you're already happy? You really, really, really have to admire how amazing you are for being able to make such a puzzle out of life for yourself when it is so, 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 so easy. You got to forgive yourself for seeing anything wrong with any of it. I forgive and release myself from every judgment I've ever had. And boy, was it fun to have them. What would happen if you were to admit that this whole experience that you've had, it's not even one experience, but we love to tell it like it's one big ongoing experience in story format from start, middle, and God help us if we ever get to the end. The middle sucks. The beginning was terrible. Please don't make me go to the end. What would happen if you were to admit that the entire thing, start to finish, has been fun for you? And that each individual experience that you've delivered to yourself, you have actually enjoyed. You do actually appreciate. And you could actually forgive yourself for pretending that you didn't appreciate every single experience that you've had. You could forgive yourself for turning every experience that you've had individually into this overarching narrative about how bad your life is. What if you could really forgive yourself for doing that when you know it's not true? The story of your life is not true. There's no validity in the story of your life whatsoever. It's something you are choosing to believe. And it is your right to choose to believe it. You have free will. You can go on believing it as long as you want to believe it, and there's nothing wrong with believing it. But the moment you're ready to commit to the joy you don't think you can have, rather than committing to that story, the moment you can have the joy you don't think you can have. The moment you admit that the joy you don't think you can have is not bound up in money, is not bound up in cars, is not bound up in people, is not bound up in places, is not bound up in your body, is not bound up in anything. It's free flowing and it's everywhere. You can exist in a completely different experience than you've ever had until now. You can experience what actually is, not what you've been choosing to believe is, that you know is not. It's not actually that complicated. It's not actually that serious. It's not heavy. You don't need to keep punishing yourself for nothing. Be really honest with yourself. How much of your existence have you thought, what am I being punished for? Why is life so bad? Why is life so miserable? What did I do to deserve this? Can you forgive yourself for pretending that there's anything you need to be punished for? Can you forgive yourself for pretending that there is any punishment? You don't need to deserve anything. Everything that exists for you to experience and enjoy. Do you choose to experience and enjoy it, or do you choose to treat it like a punishment? Would you forgive yourself for treating it like a punishment? This is what I love Because when this idea floats into people's worlds, it doesn't even float into your world. It's already there. This awareness is underneath everything that you have ever experienced, is the awareness that it's there for you to experience and enjoy. But this thing we cover it up with goes, yeah, okay, great. I'm willing to admit it's not a punishment. But how do I get it to change? Change it. I hate it. Fix it. Would you release yourself from needing to fix it? Would you release yourself from believing that it needs to be fixed? Would you love yourself for believing that it needs to be fixed? Would you forgive yourself for believing that it needs to be fixed? Would you appreciate that you have believed that it needs to be fixed? And would you release yourself from believing that it needs to be fixed? Done. That's all it really takes to have a completely different experience. A completely different way of engaging with the world that exists inside of your consciousness. Everything that exists is being created inside your consciousness for you to experience. You really, really are beyond everything you're experiencing right now. This infinite, unimaginable, indescribable, peace and joy and excitement. But you have chosen to have the experience that you are having. Would you love yourself when you resist that? Would you forgive yourself when you resist that? Would you appreciate yourself when you resist that? And would you release yourself from resisting that? Some of you suddenly have a lot more space inside your head if you're actually willing to do that, to be that, to have that, to admit what you actually are, to enjoy what you actually are, to love and appreciate what you actually are, rather than resisting what you are not. How much of your life have you been resisting what you are not, and pretending that you are what you are not, and perpetuating that you are what you are not? Many, many people have spoken about awakening. And some people have done it very seriously, and some people have done it very sarcastically. Awakening does not have to be a mass, spiritual, significant, heavy event. It can literally just be waking up and having the realization, oh my God, I have been making all of this up. I'm not suffering at all. But I've certainly been pretending to. Very, very, very well. I love that I can pretend to suffer so well. I forgive myself for pretending to suffer so well. I appreciate that I can pretend to suffer so well. And I release myself from pretending that I am suffering so well. You can actually release and set yourself free of everything you are pretending is real. But you're not going to do that by pretending that it's real. You're not going to do that by repeatedly affirming that what you are dealing with is real. Nothing is more powerful than you. You are the source of everything that exists. You are the source of everything that you experience. Have a little bit of fun with that. So, that's it for today. I will see you guys again soon. Thanks so much, everybody who joined. Grateful for every single one of you, and can't wait to see you somewhere soon. Bye-bye.